The idea of actually murdering someone to take their organs and give them to somebody else, you can actually make an appointment for a heart-lung transplant in China right now. I want to make that illegal. It's very tough to talk about organ harvesting with anybody, even in Congress, and the reason for it is they shrivel away from it. When you say, let's talk about organ harvesting, they just look down at the floor, gag, and walk away.
Congressman Neil Dunn of Florida is a former U.S. Army surgeon and now a member of the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party.
There is no doubt that the Chinese People's Liberation Army has a biological warfare effort. They write about it in their own communication. They're gathering biological data on all of us. Remember, SARS-CoV-2 had not yet been fully weaponized. They were just studying it. They had just made it more virulent, more contagious. They hadn't gotten around to tailoring it to your DNA so that it would be much more likely to say get a Caucasian than get an Asian.
This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Yanya Kellick. Congressman Neil Dunn, such a pleasure to have you on American Thought Leaders.
Thank you so much for having me on.
So President Trump has come back from Asia with the trade deal. There's a reprieve on the export controls for rare earths for a year. There's soybeans that are going to be sold. What's your take on what happened with this trade deal?
He thrives on making deals, and so he's made another deal, and I think this is a good one. I mean, we are always competing with China, and they're often abusing the trade laws. But the rare earths are something that we found are absolutely critical, and the free world really isn't ready to source its own rare earths yet. Now, we only got a 1-year reprieve, so we need to get out there and hustle in terms of making it. And I think there's some good news there for us.
What's the good news? I mean, it seems like the CCP is exerting significant leverage here.
They are. They actually have significant leverage. The fact that they would enter into a 1-year deal kind of says that, number one, they probably won't go after Taiwan for a year. That's good news. But two, back home, it gives us time to ramp up and go after our own rare earths. Now, I know what you're thinking. It takes 30 years to permit a mine. Yes, but we actually have discovered a way to get about half of all the rare earths and critical minerals out of the tailings of mines that have already been mined. So you can go to like the phosphate mines in Florida, and you can pulverize those tailings and then apply very high magnetic fields and separate out things like germanium and a number of other, it's like 30 of the elements. You can just kind of drag them out of the tailings.
You know, it strikes me like we need an actual Operation Warp Speed for...
Good point. In fact, I'm going to suggest it. I may give you credit.
Well, it's sort of, this is a defining issue. I mean, and from what I understand, we actually sold our companies, American companies that were doing all this kind of stuff, building these rare earth magnets and so forth, to the CCP with the, CFIUS.
Absolutely true. Yeah, we invented this stuff, and then we outsourced its supplies for all of it, and the refining of it.
There's other elements to this deal. We've also got soybeans being sold. How serious do you think will the Chinese Communist Party be in terms of actually affecting what they said they were going to do?
Well, uncharacteristically for these deals with China, they've actually put a hard number on what they're going to do. And the hard numbers were 12 million metric tons of soybeans before the end of the year, and 25 million tons a year for 3 years. So that's a pretty, straightforward number. you can be certain that for those 3 years, Trump will be reminding them of what their promises were.
Well, the other piece is a lot softer, which is about fentanyl, trying to affect some sort of limits on the fentanyl. But this is a promise, I think, that was made under Obama, if I recall.
Yes, and it honestly, we saw a sort of a dip in the fentanyl, but it was just a dip, and now it's back with a vengeance. And fentanyl, of course, includes all of the analogs of fentanyl, which are often far worse than fentanyl itself. It's hard to imagine drugs that have more affinity for the opioid receptor than fentanyl has, but the analogs can be 1,000 times stronger.
So what's going on with fentanyl? How do you view fentanyl from the vantage point of being a member on the select committee on the Chinese Communist Party?
So we absolutely needed to do something about fentanyl, and I'm so frankly glad that Trump has jumped in with both feet to stop this trade. It's killing 100,000 Americans a year. That's a ungodly number. That's more than the entire Vietnam War every year killed. And the other thing is that not all of these people are actually sort of the dead-end junkies. I mean, you could have some kid buy a little marijuana and it's laced with fentanyl and he dies.
Well, a number of analysts I've had on this show who know what they're talking about tell me that the CCP could cut this fentanyl flow off, relatively quickly.
No question they could do it because they don't allow it in their country. They know how to stop it. They know where it comes from. And it's very much of a command and control economy they got there. So this is the truth about the CCP. They use this as a money laundering operation. Send the cartels, the precursors to cartels, pay them back in dollars.
Well, I mean, in addition to wiping off tens of thousands of military-aged males off the map every year. I'm a doctor, by the way, in real life, and we used to see these things, and I actually used fentanyl only on terminal patients, frankly, so hospice-type style, and it is an incredibly powerful drug. One little 25 microgram, not milligram, microgram patch is usually very, very potent pain relief. Do you think the CCP is actually going to, this time after making this promise a number of times, actually going to enact it?
Well, the CCP does what they think they have to do to get along in the world, and they don't really care about getting along too much. But Trump can be pretty persuasive and demanding, and I think that's what you need. You need somebody who's going to harangue them. Yes, we've got this agreement. You're not living up to the agreement. I need more. I need to see more. And of course, Trump at the other end, he's punishing the cartels in ways that we never did before, which I cheer on. I think we should all be cheering that on. So he's making it a pretty expensive operation for them.
So right now, probably the last thing you want to be seeing is a pitch from Jan, but I want to encourage you to subscribe to the Epoch Times. It is how we keep the lights on. It is how we keep these interviews coming. Just hit the link below and subscribe to the Epoch Times.
So as we were talking about doing this interview, you said something to me about the purpose of this select committee, which I thought was fascinating and incredibly important. So explain to me, what is this select committee on the CCP actually about?
So when we designed and named the Select Committee on China, the actual name says it all. It says, this is the Select Committee on Competition with the Chinese Communist Party. And what the point of all that was, number one, the Chinese people aren't our enemy. It's the Chinese Communist Party is our enemy. And number two, it's about competition, not war. Now, we all know that war hangs in the balance, and we spend a lot of time wargaming this thing. But the truth is, we don't want war. Nobody should want war, because a war with China, that's World War III. I mean, it looks pretty bad, and we've done the numbers on that. It's pretty grim. So we'd like to keep this in the realm of competition. Now, it's going to be tough competition, but it's at the same time, it's better to compete than it is to make war.
Well, it's competition in the context of China undergoing the largest military buildup perhaps in the history of the world.
Yeah. I mean, it's something. And by the way, I think we came very close. The given wisdom in Washington was right after Russia gets control of Ukraine, and we thought that was going to be 3 or 4 days after they invaded, then China was going to come into Taiwan, and they were massing troops on the coast and ships on the coast for transport. They looked like they were getting ready for an invasion. Of course, the Russian invasion of Ukraine went sideways. The Ukrainians did a brilliant job protecting themselves, and God bless them. They basically saved Taiwan at the same time they were saving Ukraine.
And just explain this a little bit more to me. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, because I think China was watching Russia, and they were going, oh, these invasions aren't as easy as they look, because everybody thought Russia was just going to go through Ukraine like hot water through sugar. But that was wrong. The Ukrainians really put up a great fight, and of course the Taiwan, all the people, their military, their people, they've begun to really take seriously their defensive mechanisms.
So, with the Select Committee on the CCP, I mean, I've been watching you guys closely for a number of years. I mean, you cover everything from this forced organ harvesting in China, which is something I've covered extensively. You cover...
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
That's a subject that's near and dear to my heart. I'm one of the few members of Congress who've ever actually done transplant surgery, and so I understand a lot of it's coming near and dear to my heart. And the idea of actually murdering someone to take their organs and give them to somebody else, that is as appalling as anything that anybody's ever done in the history of the world. I mean, that is right up there with the Nazis and the Holocaust. There is nothing any worse than this. They put no value whatsoever on these human lives. So if you're a member of the Chinese Communist Party, you're going to do okay. If you're a member of the Falun Gong, good luck. You're just a walking set of kidneys, heart, and lungs that they're going to harvest at some point.
So absolutely, we have to talk more about this because, I mean, again, there isn't a ton of people that are, competent to talk about it and interested in talking about it. The combination is very rare, so we're going to dig into that. But you also look at, of course, you look at this whole trade thing. We started out by talking about the trade side, which of course is a huge area of competition or unrestricted warfare. And then also, this kind of America's strategic interests in the Pacific, some of these island chains and CCP subversion. You went to the Solomon Islands. I'd love to talk about that with you a little bit because unfortunately we lost, frankly, a heroic leader in the region recently. Let's start with the organ issue. And because this is something that's very close to me, I'm working on a book as we speak. Every day I'm looking at it. Explain to me what you've managed to do. And you have a bill that you originated called the Block Act. The short name is the Block Act. So just explain to me the picture of what this is, this forced organ harvesting in China, and then what this Block Act will do.
Well, we mentioned, of course, the practice, which is repugnant beyond belief. But the idea is we don't want Americans to participate in any way, shape, or form in this kind of organ harvesting and transplantation scheme. Now, they advertise that, and you can actually make an appointment, sit in America, make an appointment for a heart-lung transplant in China right now. But I want to make that illegal. And literally, go to prison, pay fines type illegal. So criminal and civil penalties on this, and I think it's a very popular idea to do that. Having said that, it's very tough to talk about organ harvesting with anybody, even in Congress, and the reason for it is it's such an appallingly bad idea. They shrivel away from it when you say, let's talk about organ harvesting. They just look down at the floor, gag, and walk away. It's just so bad. And it sort of says something that this is happening. So this act actually does block any organs for Americans from receiving them. They also lose their right to medical care in the United States afterwards. So you come back for a little post-op follow-up in America, Nope. And then the other thing that it does is we can't bring organs over here, and that's a more subtle problem than we think, because it's possible to actually preserve some organs that are harvested at the time of death. Bone grafts, placental, corneas, these things. I don't want that stuff coming into our transplant market either. So there's some, this is just like smuggling fentanyl. They're smuggling organs. Organ legging or something, is that what they call it?
I'm actually going to research that a little bit more, because most of the work that I've done is looking at transplants that are actually happening there, including things like corneal and so forth.
Yeah, that's what people tend to think of, but you can also ship those things.
There's that subsection, absolutely. And there's also, there's new technologies now. Like, for example, when ECMO came online some years back, right, where you can sort of replace the heart and lungs for a time. Well, I mean, it changed the dimension of the transplants, because now from one body, you could actually harvest multiple organs. You had more time before the body would get cold, because you had this circulation. But these machines, they actually tend to be manufactured here, actually, and in the West. And there's all sorts of transplant materials and technologies I've been learning, shockingly, that are actually being imported to there, right?
That's amazing that they do that. Think about that. They're literally keeping these bodies alive just so they can kill them and take their organs. That's so un-American. I mean, no, as free nations, we are obviously repelled by this.
This is my contention basically is that this whole industry as a whole is a good way. It's kind of a lens to understand how the Chinese Communist Party actually operates.
I think you're absolutely right. This tells you just exactly how much value they put on human life.
Congressman, you're leaving me speechless here, because there's few people.
I'm so used to this. When we have this subject come up, people, they go speechless, and by the way, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to work with me on bills. They're, ugh. It's so bad. Just the thought of it is.
And this is exactly what I experienced, 20 years ago when I started working on it. Myself, I experienced it, and even today I experience it. But something I noticed, I feel like in the last 3 years, something has shifted. There was this survivor of the organ harvesting, which came forth. There was a lot of, or more media than normal around it. There's actually these 2 bills that have already passed the House, the Falun Gong Protection Act, Stop Forced Organ Harvesting Act. Everything you're saying is absolutely true, but there seems to be an increased interest or awareness, or people overcoming that revulsion.
I think you're right. That's what it is. They're overcoming revulsion, but it takes a willful effort to do it.
Absolutely. Let's talk about your visit to the Solomon Islands, and also, for starters, it's not obvious to people at the outset why we should care about these small island chains in the Pacific in the first place, but you do.
Yeah,
Why?
no, I think so. Anybody who's ever studied military history, especially in the Pacific, realizes immediately that the distances, number one, are huge, and number two is you can't get to China or, by the way, World War II Japan without going through all those islands. All right, so that was Douglas MacArthur's famous island hopping campaign. He didn't do that because, he just thought it'd be warm-up exercise on the islands. That's what he needed to do to get to Japan. And China knows that there's actually a first and second island chain, easily identifiable on any world map. And, the Solomon Islands is very, very key location, and it's it's right in the middle of access to China, and they want to own that. They want to control that. And by the way, controlling it means controlling all their communications. They already do all the cell phones, so they got that. The communications, fiber optic cables, they already own all those, and the government. And now, the people of the Solomon Islands, generally speaking, don't really like the Chinese government or the Chinese Communist Party. They don't want to have anything to do with it. In fact, just about 5 years ago, they rioted and burned down Chinatown. Nonetheless, the Chinese have kept going in there and bribing, corrupting, as they do their Belt and Road Initiative, as I call them, bribery and corruption initiative, and they have won over a majority of the parliament, so they have the votes now, and that means they control who gets elected prime minister by the parliament. That's the way they do that, and so they have a completely pro-China prime minister in a country that's majority of people are really opposed to China. Nonetheless, the prime minister is in their pocket. In fact, his personal security detail is made up of members of the People's Liberation Army of China. This is an amazing situation. And now they have two back-to-back prime ministers who are in the pocket of Red China. And the majority population is actually on a different province, a different island, Malaita, and they were very opposed to China. They're opposed to lots of things about China. Their provincial parliament has been fighting the national government to keep China out. But I tell you, it's a tricky battle because most of the power is in the national government.
Well, and last year when you went to the Solomon Islands, you actually met with former premier of Malaita province, Daniel Suidani.
Daniel Suidani.
Yeah. May he rest in peace.
Yes, that's right. He just passed away. And that story, by the way, is kind of interesting. He passed away for lack of receiving dialysis. And he was refused dialysis in Honiara, which is on the island of Guadalcanal. It's the capital of the country. And they only have a single functioning dialysis machine there, and the one doctor who's a nephrologist that runs the thing is actually a citizen of the People's Republic of China. And so he's in their pocket too. And here we have the prime opposition leader, who's a very brave, courageous guy, dying of kidney failure because he can't get dialyzed.